By the way, I saw in the last episode somebody did an impersonation, right?
Yeah, that was me.
I want to hear it. Let me hear it.
It was a bad attempt. Though.
Let me hear it.
All right.
You guys got to hold the mic up there, homeboy.
Okay. Well, I think it went to the bit like this is Mario from the LAFC.
Yes. It's that time again. Sit back, relax, and let us take you home. We are Two Dudes, One Pod.
Okay, everybody, welcome to Two Dudes, One Pod. We got the legend here, Christopher Morales.
Christopher Arthur Morales, as Scott Kaplan says.
Christopher Arthur Morales. We're doing it for the first time here at ESPNLA Studios.
How about this, guys, huh? We brought you into the studios today.
Yeah, this is
big time.
Yeah, this is a little overwhelming. We usually do it from the Sunset Room in Hacienda Heights, but we're happy to do it here at ESPNLA Studios.
Casper, how are you?
You know, trying to compose myself a little bit. You know, make sure I have my notes written down. And
I like it.
Don't want to mess up on anything. And but you know, when I was 8 years old, I was barely learning like simple math.
Okay.
You're over here helping your father, the great Macho Morales.
Mucho.
Apologize.
I think he
Morales.
asks people to call him Macho sometimes, but Mucho Morales, yeah.
But you're over here producing things for the afternoon show on KRth 101. I mean, how did that unfold, and just tell us that whole experience?
Well, first off, honor to be on Two Dudes, One Pod. It's an honor to have you guys. You are two of the biggest fans here at ESPNLA of our radio station. So it's great to have you here to see the whole accoutrement, as we say.
Yes.
Because you are truly part of our mishpucha. So I believe the story goes, remember I was 8 years old, but if I remember correctly, my mom had, something to do on that Saturday because he did afternoon drive, and then the consultant of that radio station, Bill Drake, who was legendary, always made the weekday host or DJs at the time do weekend shifts. He believed in 6 days. So my father always did a Saturday 6-day. And for whatever reason, my mother had, at the time she was working on her master's in psychology, she had a school thing. She couldn't watch me, and my grandfather had just passed, so he wasn't there with my grandmother, and it was a whole thing. Mm-hmm. So I went into work with my father. And I had been in radio studios before when he was at Power 106, and I never really showed a tremendous interest. And for whatever reason that day, he put me up on the board. It was a stand-up board, a little different than our boards here. And he told me what to hit next. And before he could put his finger on top of my finger to hit the button, I just hit the button at the right time. And then I hit the next button. That's how the story goes. Right. I don't remember it that well. But the story goes, my father told my mother, Christopher might actually know what he's doing already. And, of course, she was set against me ever getting in this business. She said, absolutely not. Christopher's going to go to Harvard. He's going to be a lawyer. He's never going to get in this horrible business that we're in. Absolutely not. Well, she couldn't really fight it because then I started going in on Saturdays more and more. And then when my dad went from KRth to KRLA, which was very much what I think 710 has become. KRLA was a oldies radio station, like Grassroots. Art LeBeau was on that station, Huggy Boy.
Yeah.
But my dad moved from KRth to do mornings at KRLA. And at that point, I'm 10. But they had a tight budget, just like we do. And this is 1993. He kind of talked my mother into it. I don't even know how he pulled it off, of me kind of being his producer because they didn't have the budget for a producer. And the rest is sort of history. That's the radio station I really fell in love with radio. Again, grassroots community radio station, very similar to what we try to do with 710 with the communities and the COT
right.
and all of our amazing listeners. And it was sort of a dream come true. I would work the morning show with him and then sort of hang out with the promo team all day long and do van hits. And then they would kind of drop me off in Whittier at home after the night, and I would get up and do it again. And it was really special. And school was still very much an important part of my life and all that. But I had decided at that age, this is what I wanted to do. So the business started to change around 1996. KRLA ended up being sold to Craig Karmazin's dad, Mel Karmazin. And Craig Karmazin, of course, is the owner now of us and Good Karma Brands. But Mel was running Infinity Broadcasting, which later became CBS, blah, 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 blah. And they basically got rid of KRLA to not us be a competitor to KRth, which they already owned.
Right.
So that went away. The business started to change. The Telecommunications Act had passed. And my father really was like, I just want to kind of do consulting and voiceover. And my mother was at this time doing well. So he kind of pushed away from the business. I went to regular high school, Catella High School in Anaheim, and was very involved in sports. And I know you can't tell now, but school activities, Key Club, ASP, all the stuff I talk about on the air. And I think my mother was like, well, finally, he got that radio stuff out of his system. And, you know, I did great on my SATs. I studied hard. So all those letters started coming in junior year, or sophomore year. Mm-hmm. My mother was like, oh, my baby's going to go to college. He's going to be a lawyer. No more. The Morales radio bug will end.
Got that bug out of him, and
And then junior year, I said, I don't want to go to college. And we didn't really speak that much after that for a few years.
Right.
But no, yeah. And I got hired by a name you hear on the air. Mason talks about him. So does John. Eric Braverman was the program director at KBC Radio, which at the time was in the building with KLOS and 1110 AM ESPN Radio at the time. So that was my first job outside of my father. And the rest is history. I got into sports radio in 2002 randomly. Sports radio was kind of like, people kind of made fun of it in LA. It was kind of like, well, what's that thing? Like, nobody listens to sports radio in LA. Mm-hmm. And really the way the format's grown over the last 20 years nationally and in every major market, and especially here in LA, between us and KLAC, it's been incredible. So that's sort of the rundown of that.
You touched on, wanting to incorporate more of that family style, bringing the listeners in. As someone who's listened to 710 for some time, I feel within maybe the last 5 years or so, it's when it started to shift in terms of more interaction with the listeners, more live remotes and so forth. How important was it to emphasize that next level of listeners' interaction to really curate that niche with the radio station and its listeners?
So I've been involved with this radio station since fall of 2010. And early on, I have my own company that does consulting and imaging. And they were KSPN or 710 was simply just a pure client. I would come in here once a month, meet with the program director, who was Mike Thompson at the time, the GM Scott McCarthy, and I would just produce all the imaging. We'd go over concepts and stuff. And then I had a major client, as I've talked about on the air, in Houston, the same place that Travis was at. And that was ending summer of 2016. And I remember sitting in Amanda's office, and she said, Scott wants to talk to you. And Scott comes in, and they talk about a new morning show launching. For the first time ever, 710 is going to do a local morning show with Keyshawn. And I kind of chuckle. I go, really, Keyshawn? She's like, no, you should meet with Key. And, she was the driving force of kind of getting Key here, or convincing Key to do local radio. And then was sort of I needed to figure out how to make this client bigger at the time. And it sort of all worked. So we launched the morning show in fall of 2016. The original show was Sedano, LZ, and Key, and then producer Raj and myself. And then we had a different board up here who's no longer with the company, but before Jorge joined the show. And I think early on it was, how could we make the show stand out? In a crowded morning drive climate, is talking local sports going to really move the needle? And Key didn't really seem engaged with like the day-to-day grind of that. He wanted to have fun. And I think that's where we started to explore, how can we have more fun? And as somebody who, again, my background was grassroots, touch the audience, we know how powerful the Hispanic audience is. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned the Hispanic audience because it's 51% of the city. And I felt like we never really, at this radio station prior, had really touched that audience directly. Mm-hmm. A lot back in the day, it was a lot of the South Bay and a lot of these things. And that's all great. I love all those listeners. But I always kind of give the speech east of downtown LA, right? Mm-hmm. West Covina, mm-hmm. Brea, Whittier, La Habra, Norwalk, Santa Fe Springs, Fullerton. The list goes on. And I always kind of was preaching, we got to, we didn't have a huge marketing budget. And a lot of times corporate people, and they all, God love them, they think you just put the show on and people come. And this is really we had sort of started tipping our toe into the water of social media, or dipping our toe, not tipping. But we really weren't promoting it. So we didn't have a marketing budget. And I kept preaching, we got to go do remotes. And I remember growing up at KRLA, they didn't have a marketing budget, but we were doing Mucho Morning Breakfast at IHOPs every month to touch the audience. And we started to do it. And at that time, Tommy Lamb, who now is our general salesman, basically runs the place. He was the marketing director, and him and I would battle a little bit because he came from a different school, which was not necessarily get in there and touch in grassroots. Right. And I wouldn't shut up about it. And that is really gave way to what we are now. The morning show was really the template. And Scott McCarthy had gone to the network. Tim McCarthy from New York took over along with Amanda for a while. And they were really the ones pushing, and again, it almost was a perfect storm because then this little thing in 2020 happened. So we didn't have sports. And again, we're not naive to think that everybody was still listening to us, but there were still people listening. There were still people working. There were still people at home just looking for some kind of content. So it was a perfect storm of nothing to do, no sports, but we still have to do shows. And that was sort of my philosophies of how I built many morning shows over the time, crashing into a philosophy of we got to do something. And Amanda and Tim were huge advocates of what has given way to what the radio station is now, including with the imaging. So, you know, I had never really voiced the imaging. I was a voice on the morning show, like a sidekick, but I was not the voice of the station. We had the big voice guy, who we still have, Jim Cutler, and Dawn Cutler is the female voice, his wife. But it was Tim McCarthy and Amanda that were like, for the first time, we're like, you got to make fun of Mason Ironman all the time. And I think that sometimes gets forgotten, that it's like, oh, Morales, he sucks. He gets on and makes fun of them. First of all, and I say this often, I said it when I inducted them into the Hall of Fame a few months ago, we don't have a radio station without Mason Ironman. But there is I did it with Keyshawn, and producer Raj, for the audience that remembers him, was so good at it. I learned so much from him, of humanizing people. So Key became a character. We all know he's a Super Bowl champion. We know he's a millionaire. We all know he's the man of Troy. But how do we take somebody like that and humanize them, right? Make them one of us. And that's what Key was so good at, right? Is he was quirky. He had his little bits that he did. He had his little sayings. He liked to have fun. It was really kind of that the whole thing was, how can we humanize Mason Ironman more? And that has given way to having Laura involved in the show, and corporate Greg more, and then producer Brian Cohen, who's in the other room. So while people think it's a negative, and that's fine if that's the spin, that's a negative, it's really us just kind of bringing them not lower, but more touchable, if that makes sense. And I think that's what content has to do now. You know, as a local AM radio station, and yes, now we have the app, we have YouTube, we have all these different platforms. It's, can you come and touch them, right? Can you come to an event? Can you come to the Mandy Awards in a few days and take pictures with people? And I think that, you know, there's a lot of podcasts that don't do that. There's podcasts now that actually do live podcasts. But still, it's local radio at the end of the day. And that was always sort of our thing. And corporate Greg Bergman, has been such a huge part of all of that as well, of having my back and having Amanda's back before then, when we were just kind of all the three of us sitting around and talking content. And listen, many people believed, oh, a sports station should talk all sports. And I think we talk a lot of sports. And it's funny because the morning show way back when used to get knocked. Oh, they don't talk any sports. And it's funny, I think I said this on the other day. I listened back to an old show and I actually was like, wow, we talked a lot of sports. It's just the fun really popped. But, I mean, we were spending, I would say, 75% to 80% on just sports. Now, I think the days like today, and you guys are here on a day where Jerry West passed away, today's a sports day. Tomorrow could be completely different. The day after the Mandy's is probably going to be a day where we talk about the Mandy's, unless something earth-shattering happens in the world of sports. I think so much of content is fluid now, and I think we try to feel what the listeners feel. Now, people watching this go, well, there's 10 or 20 guys that rip you every day, Chris, and say you guys don't talk enough sports, so why are you really listening to the audience? I always say this. Greg is brilliant with content. All of our producers are brilliant with content. All of our hosts, all of our board ops, our associate producers. You got to trust people. They know what to do. Sometimes they, you know, as a consultant, as an advisor, as somebody who's in a leadership role, you got to help people, but people know what to do. And when John Ireland wants to talk more sports, he can talk more sports. The bit of, oh, Morales doesn't want us to talk sports, it's not really true. I love great sports radio. I think it's great, create great content. And I think we really developed that in 2020 of like, hey, if we can do a great 10 minutes on the best pizza in LA and listeners will be engaged and people want to listen to it, great. If we need to do 10 minutes on who was the best Laker of all time, great, do it. You know, it's just really creating great content. And I've worked with a lot of content producers. I've worked with a lot of radio stations and groups over the time. I've never been so proud and so excited every day to hear what comes out of that room down the hall, because it's really brilliant, really brilliant.
Great. You spoke about Amanda, and we all know that the Mandys are named after Amanda.
Yeah.
And she's no longer here. She's in Denver now.
Right. Which was one of my clients way back when.
Wow. So was there ever a conversation of, let's change the name, or we're going to just keep it the Mandys?
There was never a combination in my mind, because way back, so The inspiration of the Mandy Awards was something called the Mug Awards in Houston, and that's when Houston, and I was not part of the planning. They had planned that on their own, and I had sort of come in, and I went to the show, the first Mug Awards, and I was like blown away at what 1560 The Game and Gal Media was doing down there. And I went, and that was always in my mind. So the story goes, I had asked Tommy when we were doing the morning show, let's do the morning show awards. And of course he said, no, you're nuts. Then he finally said yes to an award show if it was the whole station. We said, okay. Then the pandemic happens, and it takes 2 years to do Mandy's one. And then we put it out there as, if you remember, Amanda and I made the announcement, and it was somebody needs to name the show. And Joey Arceo on Twitter suggested Mandy Awards. And we had a lot of suggestions. And I thought it was twofold, because it was Amanda's name, but also it was a name that could stand forever. So if you didn't know who any of us were, and you just saw, oh, this radio station in LA does the Mandy Awards, it just was clever. So there was never a thought in my mind to change the name. I think in some cases, for all of us that know her, it's a tribute. And for people that don't know her, it's just, oh, that's a clever name. I never wanted it to be the LA Sports Awards or the 710 Awards. I just thought people are going to think, oh, we're going to go out there and say, what's the best play from the Rams season? And that's cool, and we could do that one day. But this was really, and while people rip it, it is truly a night that we celebrate ourselves and we celebrate our fans. And that was always sort of the dream, it's a giant bit.
Right.
It's a giant bit, really. That's all we do. And we want to celebrate the bit of the years and the different videos. And we want to celebrate our fans that shine. And that was the intention of it. And I think over time, of course, it's been twisted into different things. But no, it's really just a night to party. It's a night to get up there and say, hey, the host of the year, as voted by you, is this or this. And, I think Mandy's 3, which is coming up in a few days from when we record this, is going to be amazing. I think people, and I've said it on the air, I think people got burned a little bit last year because we hit a lot of potholes that we weren't expecting. People couldn't get drinks, the food, that. So we've worked very hard over the last year to try to fix that. And we've tried to make sure that everybody has an amazing night and there's live music and live performances. And we just want to keep it rolling. We want to keep the celebrations going. So, if you haven't bought tickets yet, join us. But it's going to be a fun night because I think anytime we can get upward of 1,000 of our fans in a room with all of our personalities and all of our salespeople and a lot of our main partners, how can it not be fun?
Yeah. Mandy's 3, I would have probably titled it Mandy's 3.0 because it does feel like an upgrade and they get better each year. And I think what people are missing this year is the extra entertainment, the food, the prizes, even the length of it. We're seriously from, I think it's 4 or 4:30 all the way to 11:30. Then the after party starts.
After party, yeah.
I mean, for $49, that's a bargain.
And listen, there has been feedback. I mentioned this on the air yesterday. There's been feedback that ticket prices should be lower or maybe don't include all that other stuff. So we're going to come out with a $25 ticket to sell the back row of seats where there's not food included, but maybe you just want to come to the show with a bottle of water. I'm fine with that, or a soda pop. That's cool. So we'll do that. And listen, I think we'll sell it out, and I think it'll be an amazing night. And hopefully people will then want to be a Mandy's 4 and buy their tickets early. And that's great. And hopefully Yachtly Crew will be there. We've already hopefully zeroed that in, but they're getting too popular now for even us. Those guys are doing concerts nonstop. But yeah, listen, I think the Mandy's are a great night. And like I said, anytime we can do our signature events, which are pickleball, which got rained out, but Mandy's, the All-Star Game. Now we've kind of created a listener event at the golf course for the golf tournament. Those are great events. As I always say, press the flesh. And it's a thing that I took from Tony Bruno. A lot of my shtick came from the great Tony Bruno many years ago, who was the first major show I worked on, 22 years ago at this point at Fox Sports Radio. But it is about that. It's about pressing the flesh. It's about we love to be with our audience. And I think that from naysayers on the internet to other people at radio stations that are like, you really like your audience? Listen, do I want you to come over to my house every day? No. But do I like seeing you guys? Yeah, because you're fans of what we do. And you're loyal. And the more that we can do, whether it's giveaways or just events to say thank you. I mean, it's still a business. And I think that's probably what I fight with, the dead meows of the world and all of our great fans is, guys, this is a business that didn't run very well. And that was nobody's fault here. It was just part of a big plan that didn't mean that the LA radio station had to be profitable. Eventually, the big company said, no more. And luckily, Good Karma Brands, and I say this, and I've said it on stage at the Mandy's, it's a great collaboration between ESPN and Good Karma Brands. Good Karma Brands is very involved in their business in ways not including audio digital ad sales and video sales. But thank God for Good Karma Brands, because this place wasn't going to exist anymore. And I think that would have been a tragedy for the market. And it simply is not a negative on anybody. It's just we didn't fit into one business model, and now we fit into a business model. So yes, there is a part of this that is about making money. You know, Good Karma Brands wants the station to be profitable, and that's important. And this is our first year that we're going to be profitable, I think, since 2010. If we were even profitable then. I know we had a few profitable quarters, but that was a little before I was involved in the sales stuff. So, you know, and here's the thing, we couldn't do that without you guys. We couldn't do that without an amazing audience. So we thank you for that. We try to throw these parties. And much like I am famously known to say in our Twitter communities, if you don't like it, don't listen. If you don't like the event, don't come. It's okay. People think I lie when I say this. If you're in the Reddit bashing me, good. Because I don't mind. It doesn't bother me. Now, if you say horrific things about people, if you make fun of their weight or their religion or things like that, that's to me that's low denominator. If you want to say I'm suck on the radio or you don't like what I say, that's fine. But you're still listening. And we all kind of feel the same way. If you were to sit Greg down, which hopefully eventually you do, he would tell you, as long as you're listening, right? If you tell our host, hey, a guy, you don't want to be like this. You want to be beloved or you want to be hated. And that really is true.
Polarizing.
Exactly. As many people listen to Rush Limbaugh and Howard Stern that hated them as loved them. Great. That's polarizing. So that's all we're trying to do here and always the motto is, if we're smiling in that studio and we're having fun and we're laughing, then guess what? Hopefully somebody's listening. Now, not only on a car radio, but on an AirPod or watching YouTube or on a podcast, laughing with us. We're just trying to make people smile. And in today's political climate, especially in an election year, we want to be the distraction, man. For a second, don't think about inflation or taxes or politics. Think about us. Yeah. Just let's have fun. Let's have fun. Right. And at the crux of it, our name is ESPN. You know we're going to talk sports eventually. We're going to get to it. We're the Lakers station. We're the Rams station. We're LAFC. We're Angels. We're the ESPN Radio National stuff for the finals and stuff. So really, we're going to get to sports eventually. Trust me, we know to get to sports. We know when the big stories are hitting.
Right.
What we got to get to. We know.
Right.
So.
It's interesting that you bring up the dynamic between the listeners and the radio personalities, and obviously you have the positive ones and you have the negative haters. I guess my question is, how does one prepare themselves mentally, like as we're kind of venturing slowly down that road where feedback's gonna come, some not so good,
right?
I know you say we embrace it, but how does one prepare themselves mentally in this industry to kind of be understanding like this stuff's going to come? You have to be prepared for it. Like, what are some tips or strategies that you have used to try to make your skin a little bit hardened from that?
Well, it's a line out of The West Wing. So John Ireland would smile if he wasn't already on the air in the other room. And I don't even remember the scene exactly, but somebody says to Charlie, who had been shot at, or in the season before. And he says, if somebody's shooting at you, you must be doing something right. I think it comes with the territory. We have dream jobs. I work nonstop. A lot of people here work nonstop. And still, it could always be worse. We have dream jobs. We get to come and play in the toy department of life. So I understand people that go, you suck. Okay. Then don't listen. Or maybe I do suck. I don't know. There's been a lot of people in my career that have been mentors and owners and bosses and program directors, GMs they think I'm pretty good at my job.
Right.
So I'm going to go on their side.
Yeah.
Because they signed the checks. But if you really think I suck that bad, okay. You don't have to listen. If you don't like Mason and Ireland, it's okay. If you think Travis and Sliwa and Emily talks too much Taylor Swift, okay. Like, we don't force you to listen. I think that I like having different voices on the air. I am proud. One of the proudest things as the son of somebody who called himself Mucho Morales, when a time when that wasn't necessarily, people were like, oh, I am very proud that every one of our local shows has a minority part of it, somebody on part of the show who's a minority, and somebody who's a female. You don't see that a lot in sports radio across the country. And, Amanda Brown was a big advocate. Obviously, she was a female in this business that is a male-dominated business. And the hires that she made are still with us, and Lindsay and Emily and stuff. And sometimes when I see the feedback, I think, are you just saying that because it's a female?
Right.
Or, everybody is entitled to their opinion. But I guess what I try to always and sometimes people will ask me in the hallways, why do you tweet back at those people? I don't want you to feel that I'm only going to comment on the good stuff. I want to be somebody who will engage with you even on the other stuff. Now the crazies and the insults, like I'm not even going to go there, but I do believe that having other voices is part of it. I do believe that people listening, and this is just based on my career and the shows I've built, mainly morning shows, that people don't want to hear nonstop sports in this market. If you go to the Northeast, yeah, you can rip open a box score and read it, and you'll get ratings and phone calls. But I thought that there was always something more in this format. And others do. I'm not the only one. I mean, many people, the Ticket in Dallas, which was one of the first major sports radio stations, was pretty much guy talk. You know, they talked sports, but they did it in a way that was fun and engaging. And that was, in 1994. So it's just always been sort of, there's got to be more to this format than just what did the Lakers do last night?
Right.
I think that's vastly important. We're a sports radio station. But as I like to say, and in today's day and age, we're a personality station that talks sports. And I think the greatest example of that recently is the passing of Sam Rubin. The outpouring of a man who did entertainment on morning TV, but woke up so many people over the 30, 40 years of his career, that the outpouring of love for a personality
Right.
is what makes the 6 personalities that touch our radio station locally, Travis and Sliwa, Sedano and Cap, Mason Ireland, so powerful. And then you add in all the other jokesters we got, all the producers, myself, Mario. Hey, it's LAFC.
Right.
By the way, I saw in the last episode somebody did an impersonation, right?
That was me.
I want to hear it. Let me hear it.
It was a bad attempt. Though.
Let me hear it.
All right.
You guys got to hold the mic up there, homeboy.
Okay. Well, I think it went to the bit like this is Mario from the LAFC.
I like to think that there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle every day. And just by our YouTube numbers and the way they're exploding, that people for some reason want to watch all the nonsense every day. And I think that that is a testament to everybody here who works so hard to put on great shows and put on great content. And so I appreciate your feedback. Am I going to tell you I listen to it all? I'm going to tell you Greg listens to it all, or Sam Pines, or Tommy Lamb, or any of our hosts. I don't know. But it rings. Somebody, I think, Grant in LA yesterday, another great Twitter person, said something about, the bosses must be telling Morales to talk more sports. No, I've been doing this format. I've been in radio since I was 8 years old. I've been really doing radio on my own since 1999? Yeah. I've been doing this a long time. I've been in sports radio for 22 years. When I have been lucky enough to work around amazing talent and amazing leaders, to where I've kind of learned how to do this, and I've dealt with talent screaming at me in breaks that I was doing the wrong thing or producing the wrong way. We know that when Dan Hurley says no to the Lakers, that's a day that's a sports day. We know when Jerry West passes, it's a sports day. We know what we're doing, guys, and I appreciate the feedback. It's not some big conspiracy. Good Karma Brands is very proud of this radio station. One of the things they talk about the most are the Mandy Awards and how incredible it is. And it's incredible because of you guys and our fans. So we never forget that. And no, I never allow anybody to forget it. I mean, again, people going, they brought Crypto Ray and Casper Vienna to do the podcast. Yeah, because you're amazing fans. Why not? So I just want the celebration to continue. And it's a very special radio station that so many people have been part of, that we just keep trying to grow it and just keep trying to create great content every day. And as you guys know, now that you're doing the content side, it ain't easy.
No, it's not.
These guys in there and girls, 15 hours a week at minimum, plus all day long. So when you see Sedano tweeting, because he's in the airport, yeah, is he bored or whatever and having a cocktail? But he wants to engage with his audience. That's work. It's not that easy as hitting the mic. So sometimes, again, am I going to tell you to not give us feedback or not tell us we suck? No, go ahead. It's okay. But this isn't easy, man. It's not easy.
And I think the fact that you guys respond good or bad also just shows a level of realism, a level of access, a level of transparency. It reminds me a lot of the Dan Le Batard show.
Right.
Just the template that you guys have created, where it's a smeared between sports and personalities, and you get a taste of everything. And I think that the more it grows, I think people will become more collectively on board on it.
Yeah, listen, again, as I say, as long as you're listening, as long as you're watching, as long as you're engaging, that's all that really matters in our business. Revenue matters. and we're doing well revenue wise. But I think that great content it's a couple things. When the Lakers win a championship, I want people to go, I can't wait to hear what Steve Mason has to say tomorrow. When you're at a Taco Bell at 2 a.m., I want you to think, God, I can't wait to call in and share this story with Travis Rogers on Monday. I want us to be part of your life, and I want your lives to be part of our life. And I think that that's the melting pot of great fans and great content. And it's what makes us be able to last past, I remember sitting at a radio convention in the late 90s with my dad, and everybody was talking about, the internet's going to kill radio. Then it was 2 years later, they've launched these satellites, and this company XM's starting, and then Sirius a year later, it's going to kill radio. Then it was Apple just created this thing called an iPod. Yeah. It's going to kill radio. Now, Apple and iPods and Spotify and Pandora, don't mention Emily to Pandora to Emily, but they severely damaged music radio, which is what my father was obviously a huge part of.
Right.
And the reason wasn't because you could get music here. It's because consolidation came into radio, and you went from being able to own 2 radio stations to owning 8. And as much as people said, no, this won't happen, it did happen, which was, imagine if the same company owned In-N-Out, Carl's Jr., McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, and whatever else. You're not going to make all of them strong. You're going to try to play and that's what they did with radio stations. And they went to voice tracking, and then it was voice tracking from a different market. So you've lost that local aspect. That's what hurt music radio, was you took the personalities out. Well, if you're just a jukebox, as we call it, and I'm not saying any station, but let's just say 95.5. I'm not bashing KLS. But whatever frequency is just playing music, well, I can do that on my phone. Right? I can now do that easily on a playlist, or I can listen to a music channel or whatever. So they hurt the personalities out of radio, and that's
the
what
humanism is what made the music.
Exactly. And when I'm lucky enough to meet fans and say, hey, I grew up listening to your dad on Power or the K Earth or the Beat or KRLA, and now I listen to you, that's the human touch of radio, right? And that's what hurt radio. Technology, to me, is just another avenue. 10 years or longer than that, when I walked in here in 2010, 14 years ago, this whole thing like streaming. We're going to stream the signal on the ESPN app. Okay. Then it became, I remember sitting in meetings where people were talking about, the CUME. CUME is like total people in a week listening. Back in the old Nielsen rating days. It's dropping, Chris. And I said, yeah, but the podcast and the streaming numbers are going up. Well, now we sit in meetings and we go, the podcast and streaming numbers, they're flat. They're a little off. I said, yeah, but the YouTube numbers are up 400%. It's just another platform to consume us. And in 5 years, who knows what we're talking about? I think we've kind of tapped out on technology unless they start putting those chips in people's ears that Mace talks about.
Yeah.
But it's if you create great content, people are going to listen to it. Remember when it was, people are never going to go to movie theaters. They're never going to do that. Well, I think less people go to movie theaters, but movies are still made. Documentaries are still made. It's just we watch them, we stream them, right? You're still watching a television. If anything, radio, how it's delivered has changed the most. You're not listening on a big box radio. You're listening on an AirPod. You're listening on a smart speaker. But you're still listening to content.
Correct.
Great content wins. And we've seen that in the podcast space. What are the, really when people talk about podcasts, there's millions of podcasts. But people are talking about the most entertaining, which is a handful, right? Joe Rogan, Alex Cooper, some of the stuff from the New York Times. So on the sports side, you've got Levitard, you've got Bill Simmons. It's not like there's hundreds of podcasts. So obviously, ESPN, we do a lot of podcasts that people notice. But my point is great content still wins. For startup podcasts, it's hard just to kind of to get the people to know about it, to get that and the word of mouth. But that's why we try to help a little bit here at 710, because you guys are a huge part of our family. And you connect to the other parts of our family. And just like any family, there's the people you love. There's the people that really annoy you, but you still love.
Yeah.
And there's the people you don't love that also annoy you. They're like, why do you keep coming to the family celebrations? As long as you're going to keep showing up, we're still going to put the mashed potatoes on the plate. You're still welcome for dessert. But you know what? I don't know why you're here, because you seem to hate us.
Yeah.
And listen, I don't mind if you hate us, because as long as you're still part of our family, that's all that really matters.
Got to have the Debbie Downers, man.
Debbie Downer, and the best thing about Debbie Downer is she's really leaned into it.
Yeah.
She's leaned into the Debbie Downer, which I think is great.
You've been in the radio business a long time, and I notice we all call you Morales.
Right.
Like your dad had a nickname, right? So have
you don't
ever
believe his real name was Mucho Morales?
No. So, have you ever had a nickname that they called you?
No. So, you know, for many years, I kind of went through this period where I was on air early in my career on my own. Then I kind of became just a suit, and CMM are my initials, and you see my handles are CMM Spectrum. And so people call me CMM in this building. They'll, hey, CMM, CMM. They'll say it in emails and stuff. I don't know if that plays that well on the air because it's just kind of like, it's kind of cocky, arrogant. Sometimes it comes up on the air, but Morales, I feel very comfortable with. Chris, I don't really have a lot of people call me Chris in my life. So when people say it, it actually happened over the weekend. I was out of town for a few days, and somebody showed up at a bar, came up to me and goes, Morales, Chris Morales from 710, which just tells you the power of 710.
Yeah.
But I don't mind when fans say it. You know, people in my life usually call me CMM or Christopher. And then you have Kaplan that just makes up a middle name, Christopher Arthur.
Oh,
but
so there is no Arthur, huh?
no, CMM stands for Christopher Michael. So.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, I've really never had a nickname. No, just Morales.
Yeah, like the reach, even for us, like being part of this family, ESPNLA family, like it is weird because they'll be like Crypto Ray from, and they think you work here or something, like from ESPN, and it's like, oh no, I don't work there, I'm just a fan.
Right.
But the reach that you guys have, and then to be able to create those social media communities, and just that everybody's kind of like tied in. And they used to be separate. It seems like they're all kind of blending in together now.
So that really, I don't know if we planned it, but that was Tim McCarthy, who I spoke of, Amanda Brown, Greg Berg, myself. And that was really Greg who was pushing at the time. And it wasn't that nobody wasn't pushing for it. It was just Chris needs to be the voice of the station throughout. And sort of back then, what I was doing more of, and I just don't have as much time now, we do more of it live, was connecting the shows by the use of imaging. And like, oh, earlier you heard Travis and Sliwa say this about Mason Ireland. And that's sort of, we connected them. And then you have great performers like Steve or Mace that knew how to come out of it and say, what? And that's how we used imaging in production to create this. I like to say it to people, we're not 3 shows, we're 1 9-hour show.
Right.
And even the people that hate the other shows, they seem to always listen. Listen a long time.
All 9 hours.
Yeah. So again, you can hate us, you can rip us, but if you're listening for 9 hours, thank you. Even by the way, if you're listening for 15 minutes, thank you. If you're thinking of us, thank you. If you're listening to Lakers basketball or Rams football or LAFC or Angels baseball, thank you. If you're listening to the NBA Finals tonight at 5:30, courtesy of ESPN Radio, who Good Karma Brand now pretty much runs a lot of the day-to-day sales and marketing and operations, thank you. So I think that creating great content, having great people, having great fans, and really having great events. And I think that that's what our goal in 2025 at Good Karma Brands and ESPNLA is to make our signature events even better, the 4 big ones, and then do more remotes, do more events in the community. That's really always been my goal, is when that church carnival was going on in May, guess what? 710 is there. And I think so much of that I learned from my father and what Power 106 built. And Power 106 is now the most followed radio station in Los Angeles from a social media standpoint. And we're the most followed sports radio station, but they are the most followed of all radio stations. And I mean, the big number is a jump. So we're close to hitting 1 million followers combined. I think ahead of us is Kiss FM and Real 92.3, and they're both like 1.1 million. We'll be 1 million soon. Then there's Power at 4 million. And I think part of that is for years, if there was something going on in the community, Power 106 was there. You saw that van handing out T-shirts. So I would love for us to grow more in that way, to be more community involved, to more events, more things that we can be part of. So that takes manpower. That takes resources. We're growing. You know, a lot of radio stations aren't growing. Radio business isn't growing. We're growing here. And that's a compliment to everybody who touches it, and a really compliment to Good Karma Brands, an incredible company. A privately held company. The founder, Craig Karmazin, Steve Holitzin are the president, and then Sam Pines, who's the senior vice president partner, and there's others that have made this such an amazing company that loves doing great content. So,
yeah, I would say after this podcast, Morales is his most hated person. Might be in jeopardy, man. Yeah.
Really?
He might be a little more likable after this.
Well, I don't know if that's good or bad. So, but I love all of you guys. I love the audience. I hope that if you're coming to the Mandy's and you hate me, that you come up to me and say, "Hey, I hate you," and tell me why, and maybe I can do something better. You know, when I see so many comments, I kind of think, well, why do you hate me? Why don't you like what we're doing? And then if you dare reply, some people go, "Oh, you got thin skin," or "Oh, you don't know how to take a joke. It's just a bit." Okay. Like, again, I want feedback. So I just don't want to hear feedback about, "Oh, you guys suck because you do this," or "Oh, this person is this." Like, make it about what we do on the radio.
Constructive criticism.
Yeah. I've been doing this a very long time, as I've said. I know great content. I know great segments. I think that's why I've lasted so long in a business where you don't always last that long. And, a thing is that corporate Greg, Mason and Ireland Greg shouldn't talk. I think Greg is fantastic.
I love that Greg has been involved more.
He knows how to
with
talk
it.
sports.
Yeah.
For the part of the audience that loves sports, he's great at sports talk. And here's the reality, guys. As leaders, all of us, as people that help operate this thing and look towards the future, I want Mason and Ireland to stay on for 20 more years. But they've been doing this for 30. So we got to talk about the future. What is the future?
Right.
Is the future Crypto Ray and Casper Villa doing a show one day? Maybe. Is the future Lindsay and Laura doing a show one day? Is the future, Emily and Jorge doing a show? Like, I think of those things as we grow, because the guys that are doing it full time now, they're not going to do it forever. People retire, or people just don't want to do it anymore. So there is a method to the madness, okay? Because the last thing I want this radio station ever to do is Mason and I want to retire when we bring in some show from Dallas that nobody knows. I don't think that that's true to what we are. I would love to see people grow from within,
Right.
or our fan base or something like that. So I could also get hit by a bus tomorrow and then it all stops. But other than that, as long as that doesn't happen, I think we're going to keep churning along and keep growing and keep engaging people on 710.
Is your mom proud of you now? Is she okay with you in the radio now? Or does she come at? Yeah.
So I don't think she was. I'm not going to say she's always been proud of me. I don't think she never necessarily liked the person I was in my 20s, where I was more executive and vice president guy and wore a suit every day. I don't know if she liked that person that much. I think she loves the person who has truly followed in my father's footsteps and is privileged enough to go on the radio in Los Angeles, the airwaves that my father dominated for many years. I think that makes her happy. I think that makes my father happy. And I never expected it. If you told the guy in his 20s who's wearing a suit every day, having a good old time, and an executive, that I was going to be doing sports radio in Los Angeles on 710, and most of it was just nonsense, we're just talking nonsense,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have believed it. But a lot of great people in my career, from the McCarthys, Tim McCarthy, Scott McCarthy, Raj Groves, Keyshawn, Amanda Brown, Dan Zampillo, Mike Thompson. There's been so many people just at this radio station that have been so impactful in my career and so impactful in my life. And then later, Sam Pines and Good Karma Brands, Evan Cohen, Stephen Craig, Tommy Lamb. Like, I've just been really blessed to be surrounded by amazing people. And Greg, who has known me since the Fox Sports Radio days 20 years ago, or 22 years ago now, this is really important in dealing with talent or dealing with insane people like myself. He knows how to be kind of the calm to my this. And some days I walk in and I'm just, we're not doing this, and what happened? And he's very calm. And that's important. We have a great relationship. And producer Jorge has seen me during the morning show days, and I trust Jorge with my life. And, I love that guys like you guys and a lot of our fans get to see the inside of it, because it really is special. It's a special place to be. It's a special place to be part of. So I'm so thankful for those relationships and so thankful for those people.
Well, we can't express how blessed and thankful we are to just be able to have this moment and to get to know you more, for the listeners out there to get to know you more, because we see the fun and frivolity all the time, but you don't really get to peel back the curtains and see just how much effort, how much work you put into really please the listeners, to try to provide the best experience that they can on the radio. So we're truly blessed and honored for this opportunity.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for coming up to downtown LA in its condition these days.
Oh, yeah.
And being part of the fun and frivolity, the tomfoolery and the hijinks. We can't wait for Mandy's 3. We can't wait for Mandy's 4 in years to come. And I can't wait to do two dudes, one pod. I keep screwing up on that name.
It's all right. It's all right. We'll get
Maybe
it
I
right.
need a t-shirt or something. I can't wait to do 2 dudes, 1 pod again.
Yes.
All right, guys.
Sounds
Thank you so
great,
much.
buddy.
Have a great day.
Heck yeah, buddy.
Awesome.
Do shakes. Do shakes. All right, guys.
All right.
Thanks so much.